What is up, everybody? It's your boy, Dizzy of the Dead. We are back with another video. I wanted to talk about Spider-Noir. I finally got around to watching all 8 episodes of Spider-Noir, and now I'm going to make a review for it. I wanted to put it in fresh media really badly. I really wanted to put this in fresh media because Nicolas Cage is just a charisma fountain. He's just a fountain of charisma. This show is an alternate universe take on Spider-Man. Obviously, people know the Spider-Verse, and I never watched the Spider-Verse movies, the Miles Morales ones, for different reasons. But eventually, I'll get around to them as I go on a Marvel binge up until Doomsday. But seeing this show, I heard the rumors about it, and I wanted to check it out. And so I was like, okay, it's Nicolas Cage. I gotta watch this. I'm a huge Nicolas Cage guy. So yeah, I watched it, and I genuinely enjoyed it. I would not put it in fresh media, but I enjoyed it for what it was, and I like the condensed sort of focused storytelling of the story. Like the writing was very decent. It's something that I would recommend for people that were into the genre, into Spider-Man. I'd be like, yeah, you'd like that. Particularly the noir style, the fact that they had it in both a color version and black and white version. I thought was fucking awesome. And you can switch while you're watching. You can switch from color to black and white while you're watching the episode that you're on. It's really cool. It's kind of immersive, and it's like one of the best features about it is being able to switch back and forth. I watched it in the black and white version, all 8 episodes, and the story follows kind of a your typical noir detective mystery as it should be. The first 4 episodes are sort of like I like those first 4 episodes. That's the stuff that I really enjoyed. I think the when it came around to the finale, it kind of tied up loose ends and it ended very I guess a solid ending. I would say it wasn't a terrible ending. It wasn't a bad ending. It was just like, okay, we tied up storylines and we've done something that was enjoyable. It was fun. It was neat. And so, with that being said, episode 5 kind of took me out of it for a couple reasons, right? Up until that point, episodes 1 through 4 had a very solid like foundation. It's like, okay, Ben Riley, who was played by Nicolas Cage, he puts up his cape and boots and mask, and he's no longer the Spider. He's no longer Spider-Man of this universe after he loses his love of his life, Ruby. This is all explained in exposition dialogue or monologue at the very opening of episode 1. So then he takes on a couple cases from different people, from Cat Hardy, who is a take on Felicia Hardy, Black Cat, in this universe, to find Flint Marco, aka Sandman. He's investigating different, he's a private investigator, so he's taking on different jobs. One of them is a guy who's creeping on the mayor, who's having an affair with Cat Hardy. So a lot of these plot threads start tying into each other. It's kind of a complicated show actually when you first start off with it, and it's how detective mysteries usually are, kind of complicated, interweaving stuff, typical web stuff, right? And so with that complicated storytelling it's very intriguing. Sometimes you can get lost in the sauce though, and it can get kind of confusing if you don't pay attention to what's happening. Particularly with detective noir thrillers like this, it can get a little bit confusing. And it had a nice, who's the rat in Silvermane's gang, storyline subplot that was resolved by episode 3. So when episode 4 comes around, there's a new plot thread, and then we keep moving forward with superheroes and superpowered people. We get kind of, I think what his name was, Megavolt or something, which is basically this version of Electro in the noir universe with Sandman, Flint Marco, Lonnie Lorcan, obviously Tombstone, and these were soldiers that were tested on by the Germans in World War One. And so I had to think about where this was on the timeline. It was like 1932, I think. There's a lot of fun little Easter eggs and references because it came out. It's supposed to take place in 1932, so you get references like the Freaks movie and Frankenstein and Humphrey Bogart. Like there's a lot of different cool 1930s and 1920s references in this show. And it's really nice. The one thing I would say, like if they wanted to do a really deep dive on the noir style, they could have filmed it in a noir style the same way that the 1920s and 30s movies did. They chose to do a more modern style and just layer it in black and white, which I thought was a little bit disappointing, but nonetheless, the black and white style really helped with the vibe of what they were going for. And so when it gets to episode 5, it starts to throw in some of the identity politics stuff. It's not so bad that it takes you out of it. For me, it was just like I kind of rolled my eyes a little bit at it. But since it is a story that takes place in the 1930s, naturally they would address the things like, the systemic racism of the time and the sexism of the time. It makes sense that they would address that because of the period piece of the story. For me, though, I would just be like, if you're going to tell a period piece about this story, be accurate and faithful to it without injecting your own identity or whatever into it. Just don't do it otherwise. Right? The fact that we have Janet, who is a body positive Hispanic woman that is Ben Reilly's, I guess, assistant in his office, who he later says in like episode 6 that she is a better detective than he is. And then basically at the end of the season makes it Riley and Ruiz private investigators. Like, I don't think that would happen in 1930s, right? Things like that. So there are small, like, modern day isms in there. I forgive it for the most part up to a point just because Nicolas Cage is so fucking entertaining. And genuinely, it's hard to describe the euphoria and ecstasy of watching a Nicolas Cage performance when the dude has fun. There's nothing like it. Nicolas Cage is how do I describe? He's not a great actor. He's a good enough actor that it's believable, but he's also shit enough that it makes it for a wild experience. If you watch National Treasure, Ghost Rider, Renfield, Mandy, The Unbearable Weight of Unimaginable Talent, like, the dude is like, one of my favorite things about him is when he shows up as a cameo for Fu Manchu in the Werewolf Women of the SS in the Rob Zombie's trailer for Grindhouse. Like, Nicolas Cage is just a well of charisma, and he is the best part of this show. Every time Nicolas Cage is on screen, it is a massive joy. He sounds like he's trying to do like a 1930s detective accent, and it sounds like the sheriff from Mama Made Me Sheriff and Mr. Pickles. And there's a running joke that my brother and I have after watching The Sorcerer's Apprentice. We call him Pickles Cage because he wags a pickle in that movie. So Mr. Pickles, Pickles Cage, and there's even a moment in episode 1 of Spider-Noir where there's like a used pickle that he's eating, and his friend Robbie Robinson comes up and eats the pickle. It's so fucking weird. Nicolas Cage and his pickles. But aside from that, like, Robbie Robertson is a likable character. Kat Hardy is likable. Silvermane is unlikable. You got Flint Marko, who you want to root for or sympathetic for, but he's a villain. You have people like the Electro guy, who is clearly a villain, and you don't like him. I particularly don't like him because his accent is so 1930s, it sounds like nails on a fucking chalkboard. It's just so annoying and so gross and greasy, but that's what makes it fun and believable, is that it sounds like he's here, say, and he's coming from the 1930s, and it's so realistically believable that it makes me hate the guy, That was part of the engagement. Of course, Lonnie Lorcan, they couldn't let Tombstone just be a bad guy. He had to be a sympathetic bad guy that got cured and went off and lived his life because of racism or some shit. But nonetheless, like, it's a pretty decent story, pretty simplistic in terms of like how the noir genre works. However, I would say the first 4 episodes definitely are the best part of the show, and I can see some of the reshoots and how some of the wigs that were used for Nicolas Cage or whatever were different, and some of the different styles and stuff that they were putting in. The verisimilitude was starting to thin out by episode 5 and 6. 7 and 8, it wrapped up pretty decently. It ended good. I would watch a season 2 if it came out, but I would not put this in a fresh media category. Without spoiling too much, all I could say, Brendan Gleeson is always great in almost everything that he's in, so naturally he did a pretty good job as Silvermane. Now, I was under the impression that Silvermane was Italian, but I could be completely wrong. And in this show, he's Irish. So, I mean, and Brendan Gleeson. How can you hate Brendan Gleeson? You know, he's just a fucking great actor. And seeing him be on the same screen as Nicolas Cage is just a fun thing to watch. And so the Spider-Man stuff, like him swinging around, looks good. I will say this though, like I'm not a huge expert on Spider-Noir or the Spider-Verse or anything. My universe has always been the comic book 616 Peter Parker as Spider-Man. That's always been my guy. So I don't really know everything about this character. I learned a little bit more new about this character, and I was always under the impression that Peter Parker was Spider-Noir. So they made it Ben Reilly, and they kind of hinted that Peter Parker was his original name, but Ben Reilly was a name that he adopted to become a detective. Some of that stuff was hinted at, and I will say the CGI and some of the effects look kind of choppy, even in the black and white. Because I switched between black and white and color throughout the show. I stuck with mostly black and white though because I liked the vibe that it presented for the show. But if you watch it in black and white, it definitely hides the flaws in the special effects and CGI because some of it doesn't look super great, especially the CGI de-aging of Nicolas Cage and some of the monsters and creatures and flying around and stuff. Like some of it doesn't look great, and when you watch it in color, you can see it. You could see it visually in color. It does not look great. So watching it in black and white is definitely a better experience. Yeah, I recommend it. I thought it was nice. I thought it was decent. It was funny. It was engaging. I laughed a lot, and mostly at Nicolas Cage. Whenever he puts on the mask, he goes from the 1930s like Mr. Pickles like sheriff sound to sound like Cad Bane. He sounds like Cad Bane from Star Wars when he puts on the mask. It's so the show is just like if nothing else, watch the show because of Nicolas Cage. His performance steals the show every single time he's on screen. I could forget the modern day isms. I can forget the tokenisms and all the other stuff that I don't like. The plot can even be completely shit if it was. And I don't think it was. But Nicolas Cage was the redeeming factor of this show. And if there's nothing else, watch it for Nicolas Cage. So all I could say is much love to Nicolas Cage for just delivering on such a special show and a special performance. But it was fun. It was just fun. I wouldn't put it in fresh media, but it was fun. But let me know what y'all think in the comments down below. Have you seen it? Do you like it? Do you hate it? Let me know in the comments down below. Like, share, and subscribe, and I'll see y'all in another video very soon.